I think we can. And so I was told by some people that they like our opens. They like our cold opens. So I got to,
I like them.
yeah,
I think they sound pretty good.
it's just kind of fun, just kind of goofing around. Anything I can do to get Christie Walters to laugh at me right now. And of course she smiles, so you can't.
I keep trying to hold the laughter back, but it's always there. It's always there. I just enjoy life. That's it. And I enjoy this. Why? Who wouldn't love this? Right?
Hi, Christie.
Hi, Jeff.
We're recording now.
The many hours of conversation you and I have had, we've had probably half of them that haven't been recorded.
You know what we should do? We should start a podcast.
You think? Let's call it the why and the buy.
All right. And we're back. We're 2 months into this thing. 2018 is 2 months old.
How crazy is that?
Do you feel older?
Oh, no, that is a loaded question. We are not going to go down that route.
It's interesting. And nobody, of course, listening right now understands they can understand, but they don't realize it. But we've actually been setting ourselves up to record this episode for all of 40 minutes right now. Finally, it was like, hey, we should record. But, February has come and gone. And that means that January went before it, and we're already into March. Okay, so you're listening to this on one of the first few days of March. And that is, it's startling. It's a stark reality when you come to that conclusion. And so we're almost at the end of the first quarter. And are you where you thought you'd be? And Christie, that's what you and I were just talking about. At least, from my standpoint, there were a couple of projects that are hanging out there for me to work on, and I'm kind of waiting for some direction. And sometimes that hamstrings you. And I think that has always been a burden on me in selling. And I think it's a burden on a lot of people to where you're working on something, you don't want to press. You've got all the assurance in the world that this thing is going to happen. Sometimes it does. More often than not, it probably does when you've gotten that far into the process. But sometimes it doesn't. And Dr. Seuss told us, except when they don't, because sometimes they won't. And I think that it's important to keep in mind that you're not done yet. You're not done until that deal closes. You're not done until that revenue is accounted for. You're definitely not done until that commission check shows up. And you've got to keep pressing, even though things like that feel imminent. I was talking to actually a former guest of ours, Amal Williams, and he's like, you ever notice that nobody buys anything in Q2 and Q4? Maybe your revenue cycle is different, but people come into Q1 and they're ready to go, and they're coming off the end of last year. They've got fresh budgets and they've got big plans and resolutions and everything. And then they buy a bunch of stuff in Q1, and then in Q2, they see how it works. And then in Q3, they realize that things aren't going as well as maybe they wanted to, or maybe they are, and it's time to work on that next project. So here we go. Q3, pocketbook is open again.
So it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting, though, that he took the approach of the buyer. Because I would ask, is it possible that you ramped everything up in December because you were trying to hit your end of the year goal? And so everybody that you fed a lead, that you planted a seed with in December, bought in January, February, March, and you were too busy fulfilling those orders to really prospect for Q2. And then the cycle starts all over again. And we work in small business. We know exactly what this peak and valley situation is like.
That definitely feeds into it. And I will say that Amal is a marketer / retired salesperson. So he's going to take the approach and the mindset of the buyer. I noticed similar things. Working primarily in orthopedics and having what is primarily a product for elective surgeries, the summer for us was a really slow time because people, summer's short. We got a short season up here in Michigan. And so the end of Q2 Q2 ending in June, you start to see a little tail off. July and August are terrible. And you could make up for it a little bit in September, because after Labor Day, people go back to school, people go back to work. There's no more beach house. There's no more, weekend away. And it's like, all right, I'm going to have that thing done because my shoulder hurts or my leg hurts or whatever it is. But, and then what you found was that in Q4, everybody medically anyway, if their deductible has been met, they want to try to maximize the benefit they can get without having that deductible reset. So it's kind of this concept of free money, even though it's not free money. And so Q4 would be ramping up, but that would be order taking. Now, I'm not going to get into the farmer versus hunter debate right now, because I think good hunters find where to farm. But the idea that that was the kind of fulfillment of the orders and taking, fulfilling the stuff, harvesting what you'd already planted, to your point. But you ever try to initiate something new after Halloween? Anything that's got to go to the board, anything that's got to go to committee. Oh, it's Thanksgiving. We normally meet. Our board meeting is normally, or our committee meeting is normally the third Thursday in November. Well, this year.
Well, you lose half of November and half of December because people are,
at the very least,
right? They're on vacation or they're recovering from vacation.
And committee meetings. And so now anything that hasn't been already approved is not getting paid for before the middle of the next quarter. So you get this kind of buildup of, the stuff that would have gone to committee in November, December kind of goes in January, and a little bit of overflow goes to February. And they're like, all right, we've been holding these people at bay for a long enough time. We should probably spend some money. And then they do. And then they're like, oh my God, we spent so much money in Q1. Let's pull back a little bit. And then Q3 comes and they're like, all right, I guess it's time to spend money again. And then it kind of perpetuates itself. So it's really interesting how those cycles happen. But
well, and it's interesting too that, a lot of what we've talked about here is just really understanding the whole ecosystem that your business, whether it's a product or service, it's irrelevant, but there's a whole ecosystem that is directly or indirectly affected by what you do. And if you don't take all of those things into consideration, then you can find yourself sitting by the mailbox on April 1st thinking, okay, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, right? And that's a horrible place for a salesperson to be. And I come from the corporate environment. A lot of our clients close their books either in July or in September. And so, and then I also worked in the security banking environment, which meant that from Thanksgiving to December 31st, they weren't allowed to do anything because you had audits, you had a whole lot of stuff that had to be closed out. If you're working in retail, no one does anything in those time periods because those are the highest volume months that they have. So understanding those elements is critical, and it's all a part of your ecosystem if you're a salesperson. And that's, for some reason, the ecosystem has been coming up for me more and more. And I don't know whether it's because I'm hyper-focused on prospecting for my own business right now. But I think it's come up several times in conversation that we've had this past month. I remember Luis Rivera, for example. I mean, he was a prime example of someone who was really hyper-aware of the sales ecosystem they were living within, meaning that the buyer wasn't always just that one individual. There might be 21 different people that need to be sitting at the table in order to really make a good sale. And so I think ever since then, there's a message that keeps coming at me about about building out your ecosystem and what does that look like? How do you get prepared for that? How do you know when you have to be prepared that people are going to they're going to have to start over with deductibles in January. So that means that you're not going to get a lot of sales or a lot of exposure in those first few months of the year. But you're going to have a huge ramp in November and December. That should just be, assumed and built into your plan and your process.
Well, and it's interesting is it makes July and August much more vital. You're going to get a little pickup in September. That's fine. October's pretty good. November is a short month in itself, with the holiday always falling on a Thursday. There's a lot of operating rooms that just don't open on Friday. So when you kind of lose half a week, right? But when
and for those of you who are listening in New Zealand, that's because the American Thanksgiving happens on Thursday. The last Thursday of November. You forget, Jeff, we are a global podcast.
I forgot about our Kiwi friends. If you like us, tell us. Send us a message at The Why and the Buy on Twitter, or leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you got this podcast.
Jeff and I are beyond excited that you choose to spend your time with us each week. We'd love to hear from you. And we thank you again for your support and for your connection.
But it's interesting because that there's going to be a pickup, but after a while it just becomes budgeted to be a pickup. And then it's like, okay, well, yeah, we know it's going to pick up, but not all months are created equally. And we were planning for it to pick up. So there's only so much that you can hope and pray for. You have to prepare for that. And February was about preparation, and preparation requires a lot of attention to be paid. You have to know about your ecosystem. You have to ask great questions that are going to get you more information to help you to understand the environment that you're working in. And then you have to be able to really be able to shift gears when you need to. You got to keep on your toes. And
adaptability.
There's
survive without it.
All of that is part of it. But, we're through February. The preparation needs to be done. It's time to act. It's time to act. You're not waiting for deals to happen anymore. Now it's either, if you've been sitting on a deal for 2 months and there hasn't been a ton of activity on it, and things are moving forward. Okay, you know what? If it happens, it's now gravy. Okay, if it happens now, then it's a gift from above, and get to work, because there's another deal that has to happen. You're not going to make your number by February anyway. Let's go back to work. And that's why I love that March is about prospecting, because we've got a renewed focus on taking control of a process. And before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I just want to give a little bit of a recap to our outstanding month of February. This was, January. Hey, let's try something a little different, Christie. Let's add more shows. I got an idea.
Let's add
and
8 more shows.
Yeah, so we added a bunch of shows, and then we kind of got our feet underneath us, and we brought some great guests on, and we started it off at the beginning of this month with Tony Ryan of Octave, and a big shout out and thanks to Scott Ingram for putting us together. Tony was tremendous. And if you happen to get a chance to listen to our book club, if you're a subscriber to the newsletter, you'll get our book club episode. Tony and Scott were both big contributors on the Extreme Ownership book club review. But Tony has got preparation down. And at first I felt bad that I wasn't as prepared as he is on a regular basis. Perhaps I lean a little bit too much on my adaptability sometimes, but this guy, I think he's just wired this way, because the way that he approaches his own preparation and his note-taking, and then the review and the debrief and everything else that he does, it's just strictly professional.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a pretty impressive guy. Yeah. And I've met some impressive salespeople in my career, but every time I talk with him, he's down to earth. Mm-hmm. He's approachable, but make no bones about it. That guy is ready to slay a deal.
Oh, no question.
He is all about his customer, making sure that they've got all of their I's dotted and their T's crossed as a company that is going out to work with another company, and working with a cross-functional team. No one really reports directly to him, but he's able to get these incredible deals done. Mm-hmm. He's a gem. I've been very impressed with him.
And as prepared as he is, he's extremely creative. And he and I have had a couple of conversations offline too. I mean, the guy just gets it. And I love talking to people like that because great salespeople inspire me. That dude inspires me.
Yeah.
So Tony, thanks for being on.
Thank you, Tony.
To us.
And for bringing up the extreme ownership. I thought that was an incredible book club.
Perfect.
I loved it. And I think it sets us up. One, it's all about preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Which was our theme for February. And it sets us up perfectly moving into prospecting, because what were my 3 words that I said I was going to paint on the wall behind me here? It was simplify, prioritize, and execute, because those are the only 3 things that I need to be focused on moving into this next month in my own business. And I was like, wow, that was kind of custom made for us.
Yeah, I thought your 3 words were scary, Jocko Willink, but I guess
there's a little bit of that.
Okay.
It was like, yeah,
but
don't want to meet me in a dark alley one day. I can't even fake the voice.
But the other part of it too is that book, as much as it's about preparation, it's about execution, and that's what prospecting brings us into. And I'm excited about what comes after prospecting, is we're going to talk about process, and we're going to talk about follow up, and we're going to talk about branding, and we're going to talk about attitude and reputation. There's so many things that we're going to get into, and I don't know if anybody has noticed this. Maybe they haven't had time to notice this, but we're kind of approaching this year along the same timeline that you would approach a sale. And that's a little hidden. It's the Easter egg at the end of the movie. You're listening to the director's cut right now, but we're taking this someplace, and we're having fun with this project, and moving from preparation to execution and prospecting is tremendous. And Paul Boucherel knows a little bit about execution.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, kidding. So Paul Boucherel is a friend of mine. Has been a friend of mine for over 25 years. I will admit that. Something like that anyway. And he is, he's an incredible guy. So he started an organization called Sales Marine that brings people out of military service, teaches them the fundamentals, bridges the gap basically between military service and sales, and then goes into organizations and essentially sells them as sells that individual as a good fit for that organization. It's a really incredible service. He does a lot of training. He actually does some training around extreme ownership with certain organizations. And he's just a darn good guy all the way around. I love Paul.
Definitely. He has a lot to offer, and talk about doing meaningful work, right? I mean,
no kidding.
When you talk about okay, let's tie it back to preparation again, Bajorek. How prepared are these soldiers to enter the workforce? They've got a completely different skill set that they've been trained on that are really undervalued, in general. And they're underestimated. They're not undervalued. They're underestimated in how much they're valued, and then when it's not really realized in a typical hiring process. So I love what he's doing. And I think it might have been the same day. Was it the same afternoon we recorded the interview for Bronkar Lee, our thought leader for February? Circus clown. Like, it's funny. Real life Billy Madison. This guy dropped out of high school, but then realized that he should probably get a degree. So went back, talked his way into a 2-week crash course, or a 4-week, I think it was 2 weeks, to finish up a couple of courses. Somehow got the blessing of the principal and the superintendent to do it Billy Madison style and pass the test, and then went and joined the circus. Like, you can't make this stuff up.
Ringmaster for the Swiss Circus, went to clown school for a year, has studied to be a shaman before. Bronkar lives here in Atlanta, and he actually was my speaking coach. I did a speech with the local NSA chapter here in a showcase, and Bronkar took me under his wing and basically coached me through the process of building out my speech, and did an amazing job. This guy is an incredible entertainer. He's a multi-instrumentalist, and he speaks on leadership stages. He keynotes essentially. He keynoted the Secret Service Summit last year, and he's out on the road doing about 300 speeches a year. He's a really impressive guy. It's nuts. Yeah, it's nuts.
300 speeches a year.
Yeah. So
hold on. 300 speeches a year. That's 6 a week.
Yeah.
That's every day.
That's more than one a day.
Well, I mean, wow. All right.
Yeah. Pretty crazy.
Bronkar, I tip my hat to you again.
I know. There you go. Yeah. And he has the cutest daddy baby video out on YouTube I've ever seen. As something like, I think we checked it right before. It's like 99.5 million views.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Now, maybe he's just got it on loop and it's really his own computer.
It's just been going nonstop. I want to know how you do that.
It's pretty damn cute. The baby, it's Elijah. His son, just wants him to keep beatboxing. So he's beatboxing right there. And
he's dancing. Elijah's dancing and having a blast. It's the cutest video ever.
And one day we'll have Elijah on the podcast and he'll tell us a completely different story probably.
Yes, exactly.
No, but Bronkar went through and he told us about his bold achievement method. And here's the thing, and I hope it doesn't come off as me, kind of jabbing him for being a circus clown and a real life Billy Madison. But like, you start to think about what is really possible. And we've had some guests on this show before, and Christie, we've talked to off the show about some people that really inspire us, and someone who just can make it work doing what they really want to do. I feel like I want to go join the circus. I'm going to go do that against everybody's better judgment and wishes and statements and everything. He's like, I'm going to go do that. And so then what do you do when you've been a circus clown? Well, you realize that you've been a performer for your entire life. And when you go to clown college, they teach you how to perform. So what can I do as a performer? Well, I can speak. I can inspire people. Mm-hmm. I've got kind of a cool story. Like, I didn't really have any direction because I felt like I had to do something a certain way and it didn't fit for me. So you know what? Damn it all. I'm going to do it my way. And he did that. And
he did. Absolutely. And the other thing that I think I love about Bronkar's story is that, he is truly a lifelong learner. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason he did so poorly in the school system as a child is that he couldn't sit still. I mean, that guy is one big bundle of energy, mm-hmm. and no one knew, and things are so different now than they were, 30 years ago, but no one knew how to channel that energy. Mm-hmm. And so Bronkar really figured out through trial and error exactly how to do that for himself. And he and his wife, Cindy, have even written a course on the bold achievement method, how do you become a lifelong learner and how do you channel those things that maybe don't fit in the traditional learning field. And I'm a big Bronkar fan. So
how could you not be?
I know, but I gushed about him a little too much. So thankfully I've met his wife and love her. They're amazing. But, I just think that, he's just he's one incredibly genuine individual. And I love the fact that every time I talk to him, he tells me some other story about I'm sure I'm going to find out that he's climbed like Mount Everest or done something else that's pretty incredible. When I was talking with my shaman, or when I was in shaman school.
Yeah, so. That time I sat with the Dalai Lama.
Yes, exactly. That's those kinds of stories.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Well, it's incredible. Speaking of incredible, is when you set a goal and then you accomplish that goal and then you just decide that goal wasn't good enough, so you move on to bigger and better things. Camille Clemens set a goal 3.5 years ago. She was going to win the sales award for the firm that she was representing. Then she went and won it. And before she could receive it, she left. That takes a kind of guts that you just don't see very often. And she's not a glutton for punishment. And I've spoken to her on multiple occasions. She's just really that driven. And it's really a compliment to her that she would not only be willing to put in the work to achieve what she did, able, of course, to achieve it, but then just say, you know what, it's time to go. I could wait. I could ride this out for a couple of months until the ceremony is, and I can go get all the recognition in the world that I've earned and I deserve. But instead, there's this opportunity I can't pass up. And this is the interesting thing. She wasn't looking for the opportunity. She was curious when she was approached by it. She was approached with an opportunity, and she was curious enough to look into it. But the idea that there's something else out there, and the recognition for what I've worked my entire career to get to just isn't worth what this opportunity presents. How many people have the presence of mind to be able to sort all that out? And how many other sales reps that both you and I have worked with, Christie, would just be drinking champagne and celebrating in the time between when they know they won and they get to receive that award, right? How many sales reps have put their feet up? Nope, we're going to start all over. And that's a credit to her. She shared a lot about goal setting. She shared a lot about, what do you do when you're presented with those opportunities? How do you make those decisions? She approached that decision, as she does so many others, with a remarkable amount of clarity.
Yeah. She's a pretty amazing individual. I was quite impressed with her, and she actually even joined us on the Icarus Deception book club discussion as well. And again, just every time I talk with her, it's just one more layer of positivity, one more layer of drive that wasn't there before. I'm always fascinated with people who can have what seems like an unlimited supply of drive, right?
Yes. And, after Camille came on, we talked a little bit about Luis already. That guy's got a motor. I could tell you right now. I know Luis, and I have, I've been with him before, and that guy just doesn't stop. I don't get it. I don't get it. But sometimes that's what it takes when you're doing kind of game-changing stuff. And what he's bringing with the Tactical Athlete Human Performance Institute to municipalities and other organizations in terms of expediting their care to keep those athletes on the field. And these aren't, soccer stars or baseball stars. These are the people that save lives every day. These are police officers. These are firefighters. These are people you want on the field as often as possible. And so you think about a service-based business such as that, and what he's done with an understanding and an awareness of the environment that he works within, has been able to really just orchestrate some amazing things. And that organization continues to grow. And it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. I was quite impressed with him. And I mentioned before that he really kind of started me on this whole thought process around what does your ecosystem look like? Because he really has it down. He really knows.
Brilliant guy. But all we do anymore, Christie, is bring on brilliant people. This is all we do. We find people that are interesting. We find people who have made contributions to their organization and to society as a greater whole, and we bring them on and we interview them. We ask them questions and they answer. And you guys, our listeners, are going to have a blast because the bar gets ratcheted higher.
Oh yeah, in a big way.
March. So we've got Pia Silva, who, as I just bumped my microphone, so everybody's sorry about that. Bump my microphone. Sorry about your eardrums. Pia Silva of Worst of All Design, which is just such a great business name that, it's great when everybody that she wanted, when she and her husband, it's a play on his last name, but, they were thinking about naming their business that, and everybody hated it. And that's when you're onto something. I will tell you that right now. If you want to name a company and people hate it, if everybody loves it, run, because it's not going to work. It's kind of fun. But Pia came on and she told us about badassing our brand, and she talked about differentiation. And
that book changed my life. I think I'm going to go back and listen to it again.
Yeah. I mean, and I say it all the time. If you can't differentiate, you can't sell. The reason that I was attracted to Pia's message was because she kind of carries it the same way in her own way. As a marketer, she's got a disdain for classical sales tactics, and she and I kind of bonded over that a little bit. But she's a Forbes contributor, and she brought some real life to our podcast. And so look forward to that episode. It's coming here in a couple of weeks. And then we had a couple other really, really strong performers. We have Matt Gowdy, who is the general manager for the United States. He runs sales and marketing for an orthopedic medical device company. Medicine, and I mean, the healthcare industry is 20% of our national economy. And there's so much, since it's such a big, slow-moving industry, there's so much that gets homogenized. The company that he works for, Medacta, they are the renegades. We said that word a lot during the interview. They are renegades, and I love the way that they're approaching things, and they're making a real difference too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we also have Derek Williams with 3Link Communication.
3Link Sales Consulting. Yeah,
3Link Sales. That's it. And we talked a lot about the difference between sales development reps and inside sales reps, which was kind of interesting because I incorporated that conversation with a coaching client of mine the day after we had our conversation with Derek. So yeah. I was like, okay, well, let me tell you how this is. Let me explain to you. Let me explain this, how we can, what we can look for in a sales development rep versus an inside sales rep. And so a lot of really interesting nuggets in our conversation with Derek. And then the icing on the cake, right, is our thought leader for March and prospecting. And that's Anthony Iannarino.
Yes. Great conversation with him.
That was a wonderful conversation. I was fascinated.
Yeah, that guy talks and I listen. And I've talked to him a couple of times. He's been very generous with his time with me. Yeah. He's a guy, if you're on his mailing list and you reply to one of his emails, the Sunday newsletter in particular, it may not be right away, but within the next 24 hours, you'll get a response, and it's from him. It's not automated, and I like that about him. He brings a sense of realness to his process. He's a guy who understands an ecosystem. And what I really like about him, and I told him this during the interview, that, I feel like he and I share a brain sometimes. He's just 3 steps ahead of where I am. And, he was kind enough to say, well, it's because I started 3 steps before you did, Jeff. Like, just, it kind of comes through. But he's got just a salient way of sharing information. And he's practiced, he's versed, he's a speaker, he's a consultant. He's been writing every single day for 8 years. Might be more than that. I think it's 8 years. And it's just
more than I've been writing every day. I think I've been doing it for like 8 days. So,
no step is too small if it's headed in the right direction.
This is true. Minimally required effort.
But that was, I remember ending that interview. Sharing a little bit of pleasantries back and forth. And then, we did that on a Saturday morning, and then just thinking, man, that's the best interview we've ever done. It was just, it was so good. That episode will come out so well. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. So it's coming in a couple of weeks, but we're bringing you people for success stories who have, 1, been successful, 2, in an effort for you, what that does is allows you to take what you will from it as the listener. And I think that's good. Sure. And then it's our job. I take it upon myself as, when I try to book guests, is bringing people who have a unique perspective. They are bringing something to the table that you may not have recognized was important. And they're sharing with you actionable items, and listen, selfishly, I learn something on every interview. I take notes. There's stuff that sticks with me. We do interviews on Tuesdays, and Wednesday I'm buzzing. I mean, I'm thinking about this stuff still. And I hope you guys at home or in your car or on your jog or at the gym are feeling the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that we can see more of you come and join us on our live book club discussions. That is, I think, one of the best changes we have made to our structure this year is really incorporating. Jeff and I are both avid readers. We always loved books. And if you listen to some of the older episodes, that we've had some book themes before. I love this idea of having this book that we're kind of reading along throughout the month. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's going to be tied to what we're talking about for the theme for that month. And sometimes it won't be. It may be very loosely tied to it, and that's okay. But we have had 2 really powerful conversations around the 2 books that we've reviewed already. And that was January was Icarus Deception, and February was Extreme Ownership. And basically you sign up, go to the website, click on the registration link for the newsletter and the book club, and you get a link to register. You join us live by video, and we all participate in the conversation. So I hope that we'll see more of you guys coming up in the next few months. And do you want to talk about our book for March, Jeff?
Well, I do in a second.
Okay.
The thing about the book club conversations, and I hear people, I can hear the gears grinding in our listeners' heads right now saying, oh, well, okay, it's a book. And what if I don't want to read the book? And if I'm going to read the book, then nice suggestion, but I don't need to talk about it. Here's the thing. Don't think about the opportunity to discuss what everybody read together. Think about the opportunity to combine other minds and other thought processes on a call. The people that we've been able to bring together, they're people that I'm meeting for the first time, that Christie's meeting for the first time. They're people that are meeting each other for the first time. It's a cool gathering place. Now we had a half a dozen people on in January, and a lot of those people had not met each other before. Right? We were able to put some people together and meet some people. In February, if you were on the call, or if you are, going to get it with the newsletter here next week, then, you'll see that there was a smaller group of us, and Tony was on and Scott was on. Those are friends of the show. But the exchange of ideas is one thing. The exchange of connections is another thing. And that is the greater good, I feel, because listen, I don't need to live in an echo chamber. I think it's probably best if we don't live in an echo chamber. And what I take from someone else's opinion makes me change the way I think about things. That's the benefit. I can go download the Cliff's Notes. I can go download someone else's book review. If I want to learn what people thought about the book, that's one thing. But I want to understand what someone else took from the book, for one thing. But secondly, I want to see why they took that. And that alters my point of view. And when my point of view gets altered and gets better, I'm able to offer more. And I'm also much more rewarded as a result. And so that's why I like these things. That's what I've taken from our book club discussions. That's also what I've taken from my office hours appointments that happen a couple of times a month. I mean, it's just a really cool exchange of ideas and exchange of kinship over this thing that we're all doing. Everybody sells something, and that's what we're doing. So our book club for March is called Building a Story Brand. Don Miller wrote this book. I first heard Don Miller on another friend of the show's podcast, The Catalyst Sale. Mike Simmons interviewed Don. Great interview. I've done a lot of work trying to understand the hero's journey and the traditional storylines and the framework that the story works within. What Don did with this book is illustrate that journey and how you should be seen as the guide, not the hero of the story. When you can go to sell something and you make your prospect or your customer the hero, and you are the guide, you're the helper, you're the wisdom, right? You're Jiminy Cricket, you're not Pinocchio. Nobody wants to be Pinocchio anyway. But you are the trusted advisor. You're Yoda, not Luke Skywalker. Think about it that way. And it's really amazing. He's done a very great thing and done a really, really solid job of illustrating that. And it's changing.
Love this book, you will.
Oh. I like what you did there.
Do you? You like that? Into my little Yoda-esque?
I will take my Yoda voice off camera and off the air, maybe share it with somebody later. I do a pretty good one. But yeah, so that's what we're doing. And so we hope you're able to join us for that. Pick up the book, Building Your Story Brand. And that's where we're going to go with it. So that's our recap.
March 27th at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, March 27th.
Yep, March 27th at 1 o'clock. The way that you get there is you go to the whyandthebuy.com and you click on the newsletter and the book club registration link. If you want to see recordings of our book club discussion, go on to the whyandthebuy.com and click on the newsletter and register for the newsletter. And that's how you get access to that material. We are not releasing the book club discussions for public consumption unless you're part of that club, if you will. And then we'll maybe at some point we'll release them later. But for now, that's the way it's going to be.
It doesn't cost you anything, but you got to want it. That's all.
Yeah, you got to want it. We want engaged listeners on this. So you have to take action.
That sounded like a throwdown, Christie.
It did, didn't it? It's action. This is prospecting month, people.
So we've recapped our February. We're done preparing. Now we're into acting. And
that's it. There you go.
Not in the theater and silver screen variety, but in
simplify, prioritize, and execute.
Execution. That's it. So I want you to execute. I want you to subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. If you have, that must mean you love it. And if you love it, tell a friend. Do us a favor and give us a shout. info@thewhyandthebuy.com. We respond to that email. And personally, you don't get an autoresponder or anything. But if you've got something you want to tell us, even if you hate us, and if you're listening this long, you don't, let us know. And we appreciate it if you share us. And we're hopeful that we are able to help you get a little more in touch with your whys.
Because when you understand your why, your hows and your whats get much better.
And for various reasons, I let Christie say that part of the catchphrase every single time. And we will talk to you again very, very soon, probably in the next couple days. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
I told you once, I've told you twice. I told myself it doesn't matter.
99% of your success is rooted in your understanding and subsequent mastery of the fundamentals. I don't care what it is that you're doing. I was introduced to the fundamental principles of sales when I read Jeffrey Gitomer's Little Red Book of Selling back in 2005. I actually bought it and gave it away 4 or 5 times before I finished it myself. Now Christie and I want to give you something. All of those lessons and so many more are now interactive and available online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year on the Gitomer Learning Academy. It has never been easier or more accessible to invest 10 minutes a day in your sales success. Go to GitomerLearningAcademy.com to check it out and send us an email to gla@thewhyandthebuy.com and we'll get you set up with a free 2-week trial. Christie and I were looking for a house band for the podcast, and we were told the Roots were busy. So we found the next best thing. They're called Haskins, and they are gigging regularly in southeastern Michigan and all the time at haskinsmusic.com. Go check them out.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.